We're live, maybe. Maybe we're live at the Redux Society. And in 22 minutes, we are going to stop doing this and have a book show and a book signing with live readings and whatnot. So you should come down to the addresses. What's the address here?
215 Southwest Boulevard.
There.
Crossroads, right next to Manny's.
It's first Friday. It's crazy down here already. So come down. If you can't, just stick around and watch all the readings here. Anything else, ladies? Thumbs up and
Hell yeah.
See you in a bit. My name's Aaron Conaway, and I'm the co-creator of New Vision Comics Collective, the author of the Michael Gideon Collection and the Timberhaven Chronicles. Tonight I'll be reading from Waking the Weaver, a story told in the vein of Stephen King by way of Neil Gaiman, through the first-hand journal entries of Michael Gideon, a horror novelist who has found himself on a journey through the small Midwestern town of Timberhaven and the magic he unexpectedly finds therein. In this reading, we'll be joining Michael at The Gathering, a clandestine meeting hosted by the mysterious Salme Nicolini and joined by some of Timberhaven's most illustrious residents as they discuss important matters affecting their home and the world beyond. From the Journal of one Michael Gideon, June 22nd, 2010. Lady Nicolini, Ms. Nicolini. Either way, Salme Nicolini? Yeah, she's a man. Turned out that we'd already met in person, too. He was the guy I met who was fishing in the pond during my walk in the woods on Friday. But that wasn't the only surprise waiting for me at this gathering. I needed a few days to let the events of Sunday sink in before getting this down. Thank God I thought to take my tape recorder. I'm good at remembering details, but there's no way I would have retained all the information being thrown around. There were 8 of us present: me, Lady Nicolini as herself, Jarbo, Thagan, Bryn, aka Madame Zazu, and 3 others who would, over the course of the event, be introduced as Sasha, Cade, and Mr. Trepp. We were seated around a long, oval-shaped wooden table in Lady Nicolini's backyard. Christmas lights were hung in and around the trees surrounding us, giving the entire event a fairy tale feel. This is the first time that I've played the tape back, and I'll begin transcribing it in a moment, just as I was told to do by Lady Nicolini. I didn't record anything on the walk over. I met Jarbo as he exited Tatertown, and we walked toward Lady Nicolini's together. He was wearing his ever-present milk jug crown and had a worn-out plastic blue star pinned to his coat that faintly read First Place Speller. We didn't talk much, though, as he was busy finishing one of his lessons, this time with Simone, a mouse that he had in his pocket. Lady Nicolini met us at the gate to her backyard. I recognized immediately that I was looking at a man. He was clean-shaven, wearing a peasant dress and a woman's hat, but clearly wasn't trying to hide that she was a guy. At this point, I hadn't placed it. We'd already met at the fishing pond. Jarbo bowed deeply before Lady Nicolini and thanked her for his invite, crossing into the backyard by her leave. She then introduced herself to me and thanked me for coming. I said I appreciated my invitation as well. As I did so, I started the tape recording in my pocket. Lady Nicolini, I'm sure you have so many questions about everything going on tonight, and I promise to answer those that I can, the best that I can. I must apologize once again for just leaving a note on your door and not introducing myself, but things have been very hectic for me as of late. Me. It was peculiar, but certainly not the oddest thing to happen to me this week. Lady Nicolini, of that I've no doubt. I hope the dreams are manageable. Me. How did Lady Nicolini to the gathered people? Now that we've all arrived, let us sit. Would anyone like a beverage before we begin? Murmured acknowledgments one way or another. I filled a glass with iced tea with a red plastic pitcher. Lady Nicolini. Good. Now introductions. Huh. That's weird. At this point, I should hear Mr. Trepp say that he's a busy man and couldn't they just get on with things. I remember him saying something to that effect. He's not on the tape, though. I've rewound and played it back 3 times, and all I hear are background noises, my ice clinking in the glass as I drink. And so, Lady Nicolini, be that as it may, Mr. Trepp, the rules will be adhered to. We'll start with you since you're in such a rush. Who have you brought to my table? Once again, I have no recording of Mr. Trepp's voice, but I can hear that the tape recorded while he was speaking. Great, like he didn't creep me out enough already. I went to Hollywood a few years back. It was the first time one of my books was being shown around for a possible movie adaptation, and my then agent, this is before Patty, thought that I should make the rounds, put my name out there. I hated it, the fakeness of it all. Anyway, while I was there, I met with multiple producers, assistant producers, etc., guys in their 30s who didn't even bother trying to remember why they were shaking my hand, having already mentally checked out and headed to their next meeting. Mr. Tripp had their look, if not their feel. They'd been pups, growling and barking in the cell phones at fresh-faced PAs to prove that they could be heard. Mr. Tripp was a wolf. When he smiled, I felt it in my jugular. He introduced Sasha, his assistant. She looked like candy wrapped in a bear trap, sweet to taste, but you'd lose a hand in the attempt. Then he announced his candidate for Timberhaven's replacement weaver, Cade. I wasn't positive what a weaver did in Timberhaven, but if Cade was any indication, it wasn't pleasant. He's a built guy, maybe mid-20s. He has more tattoos than any 3 people I know, and that was only the count from the skin I could see. He has a shaved head, wore a collar, and has brilliant white, perfect straight teeth. He has the most unsettling pair of eyes I've ever seen. After introducing Cade, Mr. Tripp searched around the table and said that he saw no other worthwhile candidates and asked if he was safe to assume that Cade had the job. Jarbo/Thagan speaking over one another. I say it is not. Proper protocol, sir. Mr. Tripp merely smiled, looking around the table at each of us. I literally averted my eyes as he turned toward me. Lady Nicolini. As it happens, we do have another candidate. Mr. Gideon, would you be so kind as to accept the nomination? Me. I'm not sure that I remember finding the nerve to glance at Mr. Tripp. He was still smiling. Lady Nicolini. It's merely a formality. You've seen how we in Timberhaven have our eccentricities so far as formalities go. We just need a suitable vote. We couldn't have Mr. Cade run unopposed. Mr. Tripp was staring, smiling his wolf smile at me like I was wearing a red hood. Jarbo. What say you? Me. If it'll help you all, sure. Sure, I'll be a candidate, though I know nothing at all about weaving. Thagan. See? Ha! See? I told you he'd do it. Mr. Tripp never stopped smiling at me while he mentioned that I wasn't a resident of Timberhaven. Finally, he turned to speak to Lady Nicolini. I'm still not able to hear his voice on the tape. Lady Nicolini. Ah, but he is a resident. Only just, true, but that still counts. He currently does his work out of Fallen Star Manor. Mr. Tripp nodded, turning to Sasha and Cade with his hands up. He said, looks like we'll be playing the game after all. And then we voted. Even over all the sounds of the forest around us that night, I can hear my breathing start to quicken on the tape as the casting starts. Ms. Nicolini was the first to stand. As the voice of 3 this evening, I, Salme, cast my vote for Michael. I feel Timberhaven can only benefit from his talent, and I have faith in his strengths, as well as what he perceives as weaknesses. Samuel, however, remains unimpressed with Michael, having tried to secure a tale from him in the Western Woods, only to be told no. His vote lies with Cade. Number 1 wishes to abstain, seeing the wisdom in neutrality. That's when I figured out where I knew Miss Nicolini's face from when she mentioned Samuel in the woods. I still don't really get the voice of 3-bit, if she suffers from MPD or something, but after she spoke her vote and took her seat again, the voting continued to her left with Bryn. I sense fantastic promise in Michael, even if he can't sing. She had smiled at me. He gets my vote. As Bryn sat down, 2 dogs began barking in the background on the tape. I was so wrapped up in the events at the table, I only vaguely remember it happening, but Jarbo was yelling on the tape, Lincoln, Leopold, stop that ruckus immediately. Meanwhile, to Bryn's left, Thagan had risen to speak. Mr. Gideon, Michael, is my vote. He saw to my safety when I had no one else. He's a good friend and will make a fine weaver. I had no idea what Thagan meant. I mean, I looked out for him when he was going to walk into that branch the other day, sure, but it's not like I gave him a kidney. Wait, what was that? Thagan was sitting right across from me, close enough that the tape seems to have caught him muttering something under his breath. Let me try and rewind it, maybe crank up the volume. I can't be sure what he's saying entirely, but he's definitely mentioned Dorothea as he's sitting down. In reading back through my entries, I saw that that's the second time Dorothea's name has come up. Interesting. Sasha stood next. Cade is an amazing talent. I could guarantee a solid 16% increase in ad sales if I could have... I remember that Mr. Tripp said nothing, but it caught her gaze just here. But he would be of fantastic use here in his hometown of Timberhaven. Help you guys out of your buying. I vote for Cade. Mr. Tripp stood before Sasha had even finished sitting down. He started speaking, yet again I have no audio for him, about passion and proven metal. It was pretty powerful, actually. Bit bizarre, too. But this whole thing was. He cast his vote for Cade, brandishing his arm toward him like a proud father. Then Cade rose to speak. His eloquent speaking voice in no way matches his appearance. I am Timberhaven's weaver. I've trained my entire life for it. Darkness holds no mystery for me, and so can summon no fear. We have sat undefended for far too long, a situation I intend to remedy. I vote for myself. Next up was Jarbo. I apologize, Lady Nicolini, for the disruption by the boys. Huskies are notorious for forgetting their manners. It's double lessons for you lot tomorrow, he yelled, the ladder over his shoulder. At any rate, I vote for Mr. Gideon. He's what we need here, I just know it. It was at this point that the pressure was getting to be too much for me. I felt prodded and pushed. I didn't understand anything that was going on. Information was being thrown around at a mile a minute. Things were going over my head. I was just about done. Mr. Gideon, Lady Nicolini said. Yes? Yes. Yes. I don't really, this is all just insane to me. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I had looked around the table. Jarbo and Thagan looked hurt. Bryn disappointed. Mr. Tripp smiled his toothy smile. Well, Mr. Gideon, it appears that you are breaking a tie in Timberhaven's vote for a weaver, Lady Nicolini said, smiling, and doing a fine job of it, might I add. I know that your mind must be positively racing with questions and doubts. You're no fool after all, and you're not crazy. Dreams coming at you while you're asleep and awake, weird noises and neighbors, all when you had only come looking for a quiet place to do your work. It would fill anyone with nerves. But you're a writer, even more so a storyteller, a fly on the wall in every room you've been in. To better transform events therein into stories later. Mr. Tripp spoke up at this moment, attempting to interrupt Lady Nicolini, but she just went on. Well, sir, you're at the edge of another story. Curiosity has led you this far, but only a solid decision opens the next door. Do you say nay, thereby asking us to leave you to your work, alone and quiet in your rented home to finish your book? If that is your wish, you must only say so now, and we will oblige. Or do you continue down the path that you've discovered and say yes, able to sate your curiosity on whatever comes next? And she was right. I had far too many questions. I'd go crazy without answers. And this might be the only way to continue collecting the pieces. I voted for myself with no idea what I was accepting. Yeah.
You just like Eric on his book. You just write every year with all of his books. His wife's crying. His wife is crying. Every week you just take a drink, you can feel free to walk around before we get to the next presentation.
Okay. I'm Nancy Mosburg, and this is my second poetry book, and I'm really excited about it. The last one was 10 years ago, so it took me a long time to do another book. So I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of my poems. In this age of technology, here I am, coping with the speed of news, cars, and science. I ask, what need then for poetry? Maybe just a desire to make something beautiful in a world turned upside down. A universal balm for trauma is tea to help people cope. Myself, I prefer whiskey on ice. That's supposed to be a witty one. And here's another. I inhale sea air, a pungent combination of salt and wind. Leaving my childhood home in the dust had its rewards, but some things just don't alter with time, like memories. In bits and pieces from the smoke screen of a dream, too dark to remember in this strange wine of air and memory, I lift my glass and toast all the heavenly host of my childhood past. I order a Grey Goose martini straight up with a twist of lime. And that's the name of my book, A Twist of Lime. And the poems in it are kind of, some people say they're a little bit dark, but I guess it's a matter of opinion. Okay, here is another one. The slanting light cast shadows into my world as I reflected that I seemed to make the same mistakes over and over. All my positive thoughts and desires to make sense of my own weaknesses remain elusive. As night closes in, I know that morning will bring cool air to refresh the earth, and I will get on with my life with new hope. That's a poem about hope, and things always get better. And that's kind of what I chose to read. Oh, my editor wants me to read another one. What is it about a grilled cheese sandwich at Dimichi's that gives comfort to the soul? On a perfect autumn day in a leafy little village that is far from a wasteland, the silent streets roll back time, enabling me to see eyes no longer blind to the beauty that surrounds. Something inexplicable, plain and easy to swallow in a world turned upside down. The warm golden cheese gives a rising escape into my own hunger.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Walker. And I wrote the book, Face Everything and Rise. So this is the book cover, but I'm reading from an older one. So the book is about the death of our daughter, Hope. So at 17 weeks pregnant, we found out she had osteogenesis imperfecta type 2, which is the lethal version of brittle bone disease. So all of the bones in her body were broken. Her ribs were breaking in on her heart and her lungs, and she was suffering, in plain and simple. And the thing is that her condition was actually threatening my life too. And so we made the difficult decision to terminate the pregnancy. And this book is about that journey, what it's really like to have to make that decision, what the procedure is, because there's so much crap that surrounds it that people just don't understand what they're getting into when they go through it. And it's about that. It's also about the darkness that comes from the laws that are wrapped around the clinics that these happen at, and how those laws, like asking me 6 times if I wanted to be there and do that, and the deep down in my heart of hearts, did I want to be doing that? No. But the fact is that we needed to save my life and Hope's suffering. So this book is about how that journey transformed our lives, my life, my husband's, and my son's life, and how we found the strength to rise. After the Women's March in October, women embraced me, and I'll read a passage about that, and it really helped heal me after the tragedy that we had. So this is a couple of excerpts from Face Everything and Rise. So this is, the first passage is from right after we found out that there was something wrong with Hope. We didn't know what was wrong yet, but the doctor basically came in and told us, just prepare for the worst. Ringing, ringing, ringing. My ears shriek with the piercing sound of ringing. The air that I breathed in when I saw the look on the doctor's face when he walked into our tiny, stifling exam room had long since gone stale. I felt it stirring, welling and building into a scream. Finally, it clawed out of my lungs in a sharp choke. Hot tears burned down my cheeks and dripped down onto my chest. He said, I'm so sorry that you need to prepare for the worst. Your baby will not make it. There was nothing but ringing after that, ringing and crying, and a hole punched in my chest. I remember asking what exactly it was. He replied he knew just that the baby had measured small, and that there was something wrong with its spine and skull. There was a specialist in Wichita he went to school with who could tell us more. Then nothing more before he left the room. I left the snipping of my worldly tether being cut. I didn't reach for my husband, but he came to me and held me while I sobbed. A horrible whinnying sound escaped my soul as I felt terror for my unborn baby. So many thoughts were racing in my mind. This can't possibly be happening to us. We were out of the 13-week danger zone. What about Caden, who weeks earlier we had told him and had been excited to be a big brother? How do we do this? I could feel nothing but my heart breaking. I could feel cracks forming fissures in my being. We tried for our baby. We wanted our baby. Minutes melted by. No one came in to check on us. No comfort from the nurses or staff. It wasn't until Chris released me and said, let's go, we have to pick up Caden. That's when I stood up, my face swollen from tears, head reeling and knees weak. He took my hand. There was only one entrance and one exit at the clinic. This meant walking through the entire clinic to get to the car. I felt the pressure of his hand in mine and tried to focus on that, but as my body moved through the clinic, it all passed in slow motion. The grave looks from the nurses, the whispers, the pretending to look at charts, but seeing me through the corner of their eyes. We almost made it to the first door when a nurse led a very pregnant woman through. Her glow was unmistakably dimmed by her when her eyes met mine, filled with agony. Chris pulled me through the door and to be met with the waiting room. The same weird smell burned my eyes now, but the sting could not numb the sensory overload that was the room full of happy expectant couples or a mother and her sweet newborn. I felt my punctured chest crack wide open. My essence flowed from it. The eyes, the silence, the pity filled my cavernous heart as I plunged deeper into despair. Finally, we emerged from the double doors. The August Kansas sun blinded me in white. The heat stifled me, and the humidity reminded me that I was still breathing and still pregnant. As we climbed into the car, Chris buckled my seatbelt. We left the parking lot at Crawford Street, and it felt like I came up for air after breathing in water. The ringing was muffled. So Chris took me home. I was greeted by two fluffy dogs and climbed into bed fully clothed, pulled the covers over me, and felt my light go out. Chris asked me what we should do about Caden. I told him to call my dad, and a few hours later he met them at the daycare. Chris explained that the child care director what had happened and told her to remove our baby's place on the wait list. I was grateful for his concern, but because if not, the call surely would have shattered me months later. So there I lay in our bed, crying and telling myself to breathe, breathing and crying, crying and breathing. Inside, the mother in me was screaming into an echo that could break the sky. Well, she was strong and stood with defiance of her problems. While the storm raged, it tore her skirt and tattered her shirt. But she screamed. In the eyes of the tornado at the bottom of the sea, she screamed. Fists raised at lightning, eyes unblinking, she screamed. Suddenly, the ground shifted and she stumbled. She was no longer screaming. She was suffocating as sand poured from her mouth, eyes burning, broken nails pouring gashes into her lungs. Fighting but weakening as every breath went unanswered by air, bleeding, reeling, and reaching for help. And that's where I left her. The mother I was before we found out our baby would die. The happy, even when she struggled mom. The mom that always made over-the-top birthday cakes. The working mom who wanted her babies to know everything the world had to offer. Who believed to live was an adventure. She was who I had abandoned at the bottom of the raging storm. The great tragedy roared in my subconscious as I laid in our dark bedroom. On the outside, a single hot tear welled and fell from my right eye, and onto my pillow. So that's the hard part. The next passage is actually from October of 2021. And it's about the experience of when I really started to rise. I had been writing this book for months when the decisions in Texas and Mississippi were being made. But it was my outrage of the injustice of these rulings that propelled me forward. The marches for women's reproductive rights were being formed, and I knew I had to do something to get the word out about hope in my story. I quickly pulled together a domain, a website, a QR code, and called it From the Green Desk, because I literally write on a peacock green desk. I then used my Cricut to make a clean sign. I had a resolve as I designed it. I wanted it to get attention and make people discuss the reality of abortion. The sign read, "Our baby was suffering and dying, and I would have died." I made a t-shirt and a sweatshirt with my signature green with From the Green Desk in bold, and made flyers and stickers with the QR code. I wanted anyone who would listen to hear about what happened to Hope and I. My coworker even braided back one side of my hair so that Hope's feet were visible. When I woke up the morning of the march, anxiety crept in. I was scared because my sign was so personal and significant, and I would be walking in this march alone. Caden had a football game, and while Chris supported me in my fight, at least one of us needed to be present to support Caden. Everyone I knew was either too scared of COVID or too busy or just didn't feel as strongly as me that wanted to go with me. So I picked up my black eyeshadow and did what I wanted to do all week. I painted my eye sockets with black eyeshadow and streaked them to look like tears. This was my war paint. This was a war on women, and I was preparing for battle. I also painted it on to represent the sad one, the part of me that absorbed all the trauma from Hope. My hair braided back to expose the footprints of Hope, and the war paint was for me. I repeated it out loud. The kids were shocked at my eye makeup, and I would later learn that my 2-year-old, Ember, tried to mimic me and colored her face in orange marker. My little suffragette. Christopher helped me pack water and snacks for the end of the march, and I ensured I had the pepper gel spray he bought me in case someone attacked me over the sign. No one would ever get the chance. I parked at the end of the parade route and was mentally prepared to walk to the beginning because I was too broke as a joke for bus fare. I kept my eyes down as I left my car, my sign covered in my poncho, careful not to make eye contact. I looked at the center of the road where the streetcar station was. I crossed the street where the other women were, who clearly were there for the march, stood. I asked them how much it cost to ride, and I was relieved to hear it was free. I told them thank you because I was too scared to walk alone, to which they replied I could stick with them. I felt brave in their numbers and removed my ponchos from the sign and stuffed it in my purse. Small gasps escaped their lips as they read it. One asked if that was my story, to which I replied in affirmation. She said, "Thank you for sharing, you are really brave." She then took a picture of my sign. The streetcar ride was far shorter than my attempt than trekking to the beginning would have been. Hundreds of women and sprinklings of men were at the rendezvous point. Women of all walks in all sorts of attire and a wide spectrum of signs milled through a large parking lot. I was scared, so I stood inside the parking lot, leaned my sign against me, and waited for the march to start. It didn't take long for women to start approaching me, asking me about my sign. I explained about Hope's condition and why I took the option of abortion to save my life and end her suffering. Women cried with me, held their hands to their hearts, and embraced me. Pandemic be damned. Each woman poured out respect and love into me from their cup, and slowly I felt my own cup starting to fill until it was spilling over with support. I stood up taller, and when it came to the start, I was near the front of the line, protected and surrounded by women. I did not feel shame or guilt any longer. So, okay. I returned home after the rally, showered and cuddled with Ember, trying to take a nap to no avail. I was tired, but my soul was energized. That night, there was a special concert as a continuation of the rally. I had front row tickets because they were highly affordable, and there was a small group going. It was in a church that I had been skeptical about. I hadn't set foot in church with other people doing church things in a very long time. I parked my car and walked to the stairs. Before I walked up the stairs, a woman stopped me to tell me how brave I was for my sign and that she loved my eye makeup earlier. I told her thank you and handed her a flyer with my information on it. A man checked my ticket and I walked to the front of the church where I took my seat. I was so scared of the church and of handing my flyer out, but my knees were shaking. Soon 2 men sat next to me. They were friendly and struck up a conversation, and one noticed the flyers in my hand. He asked what you got there. I told him Hope and I's story and that I had permission to spread the word by handing out the flyers, but I was too nervous. He had me hand him the stack of flyers, and he split them between him and his friend. He then led me into the man who was the pastor of the church and explained what was going on. He asked me if I wanted to tell my story to the audience. I froze, but said yes. They led me to the stage of the church and gave me a microphone. I was shaking, my body and my voice. I had spoken in front of people for work all the time, but this was different. This was telling our story. This was vulnerable. This was scary. I took a deep breath and said hello to the crowd. Everyone immediately stopped talking and turned their attention to me. I told them my name and said that they might have seen me at the march earlier. I then explained our story, and when I finished, people stood up and clapped for me. I had taken me back. And this is the last bit. The night of the rally, while I slept, I met the sad one in my dreams. Her eyes were not nearly as dark. Her skin was not as ghastly pale. She and I met at a river and sat in the babbling water. She let me wash the evidence of the storm away. I took a sponge and wiped away the sand from her mouth, the blood from her eyes and her neck. I brushed her long black hair and pulled it away from her face. I sat beside her, and the reflection of the soft current, the sad one, was replaced by film on Kelsey, but older and more assured of herself. It wasn't long before I realized that the reflection looking back at me was my own. I had taken me back. That's it. So, again, this is my book, Face Everything and Rise. I also have a nonprofit from the Green Desk where I coach as well as provide group therapy to women who have had abortions, lost children, or lost pregnancies. So, thank you.
Hi. Happy National Poetry Month. My name is Steph Castor. I'm going to be reading you some steamy love poetry, and I do recognize there are some children in the building, so just a respectful heads up that there will be some profanity. So bear with me. I'm going to be reading from my second collection called Keep Her in Your Mouth. It came out in September of 2020, most awkward possible time it could come out. Here we go. This first one is called Triple Word Score. My arm cradles your whole head, bicep flexed. I've been working out a little, never enough, but maybe you can still tell. Need another pen, but can't let you move, trying again, shit. Orange just became my favorite color, and it's good news. Such good news, the way you shove words deep inside me like a book that needs to be fucked, if that makes sense. Book cover blinds, orange wash, book burn climax, pillow talk, book your flight, nervous pause, taste everything. Yes, everything. Yes. So this next one, it's probably one of the weirdest poems I've ever written. It's called Slim Jim, and I apologize to the vegetarians in the room. I think it's sexy when you eat meat. Like the way you think it's sexy when I make it. You love it most with a little heat, a slow smoke oak pit. Like the way you think it's sexy when I make it, I come undone. A slow smoke oak pit, meat stick pun. I come undone and you pull me apart. Meat stick pun, your mouth makes art. You pull me apart. Taste salt, then I bite into yours. Your mouth makes art. Fuck-worthy carnivore. Taste salt, then I bite into yours. You love it most with a little heat. Fuck-worthy carnivore. I think it's sexy when you eat meat. Thank you. So I'm used to performing with, other artists like burlesque performers. This is a very new setting for me. So thank you all for your patience. No pasties this time, but happy to be here. This next one, so I don't know if Lucy wants to talk about this at all, but the book club that you do. I was lucky enough to have them feature this book last spring. And one of the poems that came up a lot was this one. It's called Magical Thinking. So it's for you, Lucy. Magic is a word to be broken. You pick up the pieces and reassemble them to make your own sense of your own situation. That's all it ever is. A situation, a perspective, reluctantly shared, rarely welcome, all in the sting of disbelief and the wars it could start. No, that isn't my card. No, that isn't my card. No, that isn't my card until it is. And you have to begin sorting some shit out together. The magician starts unskilled, unrehearsed, and you are just unopen to the idea that sometimes, in order for things to be whimsical, you just have to participate and not worry about the damn trapdoor. Thank you. This one is a love poem. It's called Midway. It's about a trip to Chicago. Some trains have no shame in moving slowly. It's a lesson to which we could all drink coffee and color code our morning commute. We rode the orange line first, not by choice, but without hesitation. It moved faster than I remembered. I didn't feel her hand for long before landing, the intermittent tightening around all joints, unsure if she saw all things sinister or spectacular. I suppose they both inhabit the skyline and kiss saucy, slurred passengers with stolen deep dish dabbed on their pant creases. Why do I still find that sort of romantic? I felt like her getaway. It goes back to the takeoff. I was 1 tank 7 deep and she sipped bloody. She held my hand as if to comfort me or lend her expertise, and I allowed it. Her touch went from safety to 2 fingers dancing at the base of my thumb and a restroom proposition we never saw through. Sunsets look like saffron through her hair. And for that, I'm happy to offer the window seat. She didn't mind that my nose dripped. I didn't mind that she fell asleep. It gave me more ways to paint her. I got to show off my savvy. She conquered our check-in and followed up with Lebanese. We were 6 peach sessions slosh sour at the music box during some problematic film noir, but we stuck it out just to say we did. I've compared her to museums. I've called her an exhibit. Her old soul soaked straight to my core, but I keep her history lessons with me, buried deep as air pockets, so really my stomach just never stops dropping. And I quote her to catch my breath. We love looking down from skyscrapers, but I never told her how scared I was of falling. It was more like, I'll race to the bottom. Thank you. Let's see how many more I have here. Okay, I'll do 2 more. This next one's called A Self-Love. It's for all of you. You're more coordinated than you think. Strong hands clenching strings of all types, nickel-wound, bunny-eared, bloody, pulled to a stop, pulled to knots, pulled too tight, tuned to snap when played too hard. You prefer to shit in solitude, and that's fine. You prefer to sleep together, also fine. You prefer red over white unless you've tasted the salt in the air where the grapes grow, and that's sexy as hell. Keep her in your mouth if you can. Don't stop loving her if you can't or simply don't want to. That's a threaded part of you. And you are romance embroidered by other strong hands, tender hands, blistered hands, tired hands, troubled hands, hard working hands that once knew how to hold you, and some that still do. Hold on to those. Don't let go if you can't or simply don't want to, or just because they know for once how to touch you. And you owe that to yourself. So I don't know if anybody in this room took up roller skating during the pandemic. You're all nodding your heads. I hear some laughing. Okay. This is about a really important group of friends that I found during the pandemic, and we'd go roller skating in a garage every day, every Sunday, excuse me. So this poem is dedicated to them, and it's called Skate Sunday. Some of us have moxie while others enjoy edging. Either way, we wear our tube socks and coordinated outfits like a mixed bag of gummies. We are an empire of slow toe stoppers and high-waisted acid wash, wrist flicks and bruised legs, razor burn and road rash, hard parts and tight fades, lipstick and Taylor Swift, broken arms and blonde bangs, slap shots and sore ass cheeks, arcade goddesses and lukewarm sex strokes executed perfectly. We are a gang of cryptids and public figures, group circles and talk therapy, video games and tarot readings, pole dancing dilettantes and former drag queens, a shitload of Geminis, and some stippled earth energy. Matching gold bracelets and strawberry truly, tripping school teachers and weekend dumpster divers. We are the sister wives of Sarah Castle, midtown switches, just bitches that want to vibe. Shut the fuck, you wouldn't get it. We are rooftop rejects turned court keepers, and our thighs are looking great. Thank you all.
So my name is Quincy, also known as Quincy Rose. That's my full name. But I self-published this book right here, Bare Walls, Clear Mind, in January of this year. It is a collection of poems written by me from 2017 to like late 2021-ish. I kind of snuck a few in there, if you know what I mean. But they're primarily themes of life, love, parenthood. That's my little guy back there. Mental health, nature, things like that. Yeah, so I can just jump right into it. I have a few for you. Some of them are primarily short, so yeah. This is called Abracadabra. Somewhere along the way, you appeared like magic. And there I was, pulling rabbits out of my hat, like each surprise was actually surprising. And there you are, pretending like I'm the most incredible magician out here on this stage of life. And maybe you're right. Maybe in your world, I'm the greatest there ever was. I promise I'll always pull flowers out of my sleeve for you. The next one, it's called Superstition. Do you believe in fate? She smirks as she asks the question, half expecting me to giggle and say, of course not. But I pause, which also causes her to pause. As the smirk fades away, these words leave my lips. Well, of course I do. Fate led me straight to you. This is called Collections. There are no true definitions to where we end and the people we love begin. We all become collections of the pieces we borrow from other people. The way you make your coffee, your favorite song, that certain way you part your hair, all from people you have loved and shared your life with previously. Whether or not these are positive associations are a different story. I did not stop and start with each person I shared my life with. No. I grew and blossomed and transformed myself, breaking out of the chrysalis that held me back from the person that I am meant to be. With each passing day, I become the person who I am meant to be. Problematic at best. Here's a list of bad ideas. Driving at night when I can't see very well. Driving at night when I can't see very well with the headlight out. Driving at night when I can't see very well with the headlight out while it's raining. Hiding for you like it would bring you back. Hating myself for letting things in the way they did. Because just like that headlight and the rain and my night blindness, there is no fixing. Not in the way there needs to be. I'm just left here fumbling with words that never really help me find closure. This next one's called Home Sweet Home. I actually just utilized this poem for my audition to be an opening act for Ruby Carr. She'll be here in May, and I'm so excited, and I really hope I get shortlisted, but that's not the point. I do want to issue a really quick trigger warning on this, that it discusses child neglect and drug abuse. So, Home Sweet Home. Picture this. A warm, happy home, a smiling family, love leaking through every window and door. The only thing that hits the floor are toys and pillows during playtime, with little voices yelling, "The floor is lava!" That wasn't my childhood, though. No, mine was filled with slamming doors and empty bellies, because my mother forgot to feed us for the third time this week. Unanswered cries from my baby sister, sorry, I don't know where that came from, who's been in her crib for the last day and a half, because my mother is too busy shooting up for the third time this week. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you this because if I have to hear another person say, "But it made you stronger. But it made you the person you are now. But look where you are today," I will scream. I cannot pretend like my childhood did not set some sort of precedence for the rest of my life. Attempting to walk on the broken glass before me as if I hadn't just crawled through it the night before. I am constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the bad to happen, for my heart to break and shatter into a billion pieces, because it's all I've ever known. I refuse to let this generational cycle continue. This ends with me. Gone are the days in which I wonder if I'll be next. Never again. I am also a birth worker, so I am a doula and aspiring midwife and all that other stuff. So this one's actually about postpartum depression. It's called Is This Thing On? When they asked me how I was doing, I screamed from the rooftops, "I've never been better!" But now I wish they'd have asked me just a little later, because now no one can hear me when I mumble, "I am not okay." Sorry, I'm bad at flipping these. I even marked these so I would be better at it, but here I am. Okay, here we go. It's called Can I Fly Away Yet? Birds have very little ossification in their bones. This means that their bones are very light and perhaps even weightless, which is the exact way you make me feel when you look at me. Your eyes peer into me, searching for something, I'm not sure what. But I know that whatever it is, I want to give it to you. I am the barn swallow taking a dust bath underneath that early 2000s Durango, whatever that means. And you are the person sitting in their car for the last 10 minutes because you can't seem to get out and hang up the gas pump, because I have your attention. Personality. I once worked at an ice cream shop for exactly 2 hours. And I can find something wrong with everything if you just give me a couple minutes. And every relationship I've ever had with anyone I've ever met has ended badly, without a doubt. And honestly, that's okay. It's okay that there are these not so great parts of myself, because there are plenty of so great parts of me too. And I love all of me. A list of favorite things. The sun peeking through 12 p.m. clouds. I provide the warm light that beams across your face. I am your late spring, your mid-morning Sunday coffee and banana pancakes, the buzzing bumblebee, jubilant to find her sunflower. A smooth sun salutation on your screened-in porch. I am what you are looking for. Hyperfixation. I am but an ecosystem of creativity, a diverse selection of hobbies that never survive long enough to reproduce. They are here for instant gratification, immediate perfection, and when that doesn't occur often, they cease to exist, becoming extinct and leaving heaps of their supplies behind. Yarn, paintbrushes, and embroidery hoops clutter around me. Maybe the next one, I say. And this will be my last one. It was written for my grandma, who was a lot more like a mom to me. It's called April 9th. Last Thursday morning, I woke to three very distinct things. Relevant to these three things was that my phone's battery only had 3% because I'd forgotten to charge it the night before. The first was that my nose was really stuffy. This, of course, meant spring had finally arrived. The second was that Experian had sent me a push notification that someone tried to use my identity to open a credit card. The third, which is the reason I'm writing this, was a text from my grandpa that simply read, "Grandma passed away this morning around 3. I love you. I'll talk to you later." My phone promptly died. I turned to my then best friend and favorite person who I'd spent the night with and mumbled, barely audible, "My grandma died." I quickly let out a horrified sob, and it seemed that the world stopped in that moment. The woman who had made me, who had given me my middle name and raised me due to the absence of my parents, was gone. No longer would she ask to see my art or for me to fill up her water jug or even criticize the men I dated. That was her favorite. Spring, sunshine, flowers, bright colors, my dog Bailey, birds, specifically hummingbirds, sunflowers, murder mysteries, game shows, and making my sister and I laugh. All of those were her favorite. And I don't have them anymore. Thank you. I have a bunch of copies over there. I say bunch, there's actually not that many because I'm underprepared as per usual. But I'm on all socials as @Quincy, QINCY, ROSEWRITES, Quincy Rose Writes. So feel free to give me a follow and hang out. I would love to meet you. Please come visit me. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Elsie Mortimer. That's my table over there with the lovely Lucy. I write paranormal, fantasy, sci-fi. Today I'm going to read you the first chapter of Hybrid Academy, Year 1. This is a urban fantasy novel about a girl who goes to magic school. "This isn't what I ordered." The tall man in the suit looked at the coffee and sneered. He thrust the cup back at me. A little bit sloshed over the side of the cup and onto the counter, "And you'd better clean that up." Biting back irritation, I managed to smile. "Of course. Anything else I can do for you?" Inside, I felt anything but polite. This guy was being a total jerk, as always. I knew for a fact that his coffee had been made perfectly. He just didn't like me because I couldn't do magic. He wanted Maggie to make his drink. "A free bagel wouldn't hurt," the man said, jerking his head toward the display of blueberry bagels. I'll have to get my manager's permission," I said. "Please wait just a moment." I scurried to the back of the cafe and knocked on the door to the office. "Come in." I yanked the door open and peered inside. Tony was sitting at his desk with his ankles crossed over the top. He looked bored out of his mind. "What do you want, Maxine?" he asked. "It's Max," I said, "not Maxine. And there's a customer who wants a free bagel." "We don't give out bagels for free," Tony said with a yawn. He was obviously bored. He was always bored at the cafe. "I know, but he said that his drink was wrong and he wants to be compensated with free food."
Tony glared at me and got up with a huff. He acted like it was my fault that he was the manager of the cafe or that he had to leave the safety of his office to come do his actual job. Whatever. I'd been dealing with Tony ever since I started working there. He was neither a good boss nor a team player, so I tried to stay as far away from him as possible. Besides, something about Tony made me uncomfortable, and I couldn't quite pinpoint why. Is there a problem, Lionel? Tony asked the tall man. Yeah, your employee. He dragged the word out sarcastically. Messed up my drink. I asked her nicely if she could fix it. Not a problem, Tony said. He jerked his head toward one of my coworkers. Maggie, make a new drink. She shot me a nasty look, but nodded and started the drink. The cafe wasn't busy and the drink wasn't complicated, so I wasn't sure what the big deal was. Actually, I had the distinct feeling that his original drink had been fine, but he just wanted a bagel out of the deal. Tony and Lionel sat and chatted while Maggie made the drink. I cleaned up the spill on the counter before starting to check our inventory. I wasn't a magic user, so I couldn't just summon cups whenever we ran out of something we needed. Instead, I'd have to trot back to the stockroom, find what we needed, and carry it back. It was kind of a drag for everyone, which was another reason nobody liked me. By the time I left for work that day, I was tired, exhausted, and spent, and I knew my grandmother was going to be beyond pissed that I was late. I ran up the steps to the little log cabin where I lived with my grandmother. My heart was pounding, racing, and I silently begged it to stop. Slow down. It needed to chill out. Overreacting never turned out well for anyone, least of all me. I smelled sweaty and I was tired, both signs that I left work much later than I should have. I didn't want her to give me a hard time about it. Mortimer had enough to worry about. She didn't need to be concerned that my boss still wasn't letting me leave on time or that my customers were constantly giving me a hard time. That's the price I paid to work at a cafe in Brooksville. Nobody liked me because I was poor and an orphan and I couldn't do magic. All of those elements combined to make me one of the most disliked people in town. Despite trying to have a charming personality and showing kindness to the people around me, I somehow still managed to catch the eye of every magic user within shouting distance, and not in a good way. I glanced down at my work clothes, my once white now splattered with coffee, no thanks to Maggie and Justice for their assistance at work. My jeans had fared just as poorly. They had a few new stains, a new tear. It smelled slightly questionable. Mortimer was definitely going to notice something was wrong, and I hated to make her worry. She worked so hard to raise me, to take care of me, that the idea of letting her down again filled me with stress and anxiety, and I wished once again that I could use magic. I wished that I had a wand, that I knew spells, or that I had, powers. I wished I could whisper a few carefully practiced words and somehow whip up an appearance she could be proud of, but I couldn't. In my case, practice hadn't made perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Go catch your grandma.
Bye.
Bye, Leslie. Bye. Bye.
To anybody still watching, see ya. Thanks for watching.